Epstein invested $40 million in Valor Ventures, which is a firm co-founded by Peter Thiel, the PayPal billionaire transhumanist who everyone is, realizing doesn't have the best ideas for humanity, who funds longevity research and liberal eugenics, literally via embryo section startups like companies like Orchid. And as of June of 2025, that stake had ballooned to 170 million, which was the largest asset in Epstein's estate. And Peter Thiel's orbit has only gotten bigger. But what
is Lex Wexner doing today? You think Lex Wexner has stopped making money? He has continued.
Of course.
He's actually family, Russian Jewish, like the family of Epstein. His father was born in Russia. His mother was born in Brooklyn, like Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
And that's what really my books brings out, that no other research on Jeffrey Epstein, a family business.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today's guest is Leo Zagami, back again, the world-renowned and respected researcher and author whose work always delves into secret societies and the power structures that govern our world. In this podcast, we are specifically addressing and discussing his new book, The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, Jeffrey Epstein and the most powerful Jewish sect in the world. In this deep dive, Leo traces Jeffrey Epstein's power back to a heretical Jewish sect from the 17th and 18th centuries. They were known as the Sabbatean Frankists, and lo and behold, they preached redemption through sin. We follow this sect's influence as it makes its way through the Rothschilds, the Freemasons, right into the very architecture of the nation of Israel itself. Leo argues that the Frankist ideology is clearly visible in the way that the elite, including Epstein, operate, treating intelligence agencies like the Mossad, CIA, and MI6 as subordinates, because that's, of course, why each and every one of those agencies was designed. Join us as we uncover the true significance of the mega group and how it's this secret history that is shaping our world political landscape today. Sit back and enjoy this one. Hey, it's good to see you, Leo. It's been a few months.
Yes. I have a new work of mine. I don't know if you had the opportunity to read.
I do. I have it, and I've been reading it. And that's what we're going to talk about. And my God, could there be a better time to be discussing this right now with everything happening? Oh my God!
It's I try to always have books that come out on a specific time. And,
this one is just
I thought
impeccable.
This would be the ideal time to bring this book out.
Definitely. The timing is impeccable. So the name of Leo's new book, most of you guys who are tuning in have seen probably my two other podcasts with Leo. This is my third, and I welcome him back. He's absolutely one of the most meticulous researchers and writers that I know out there, right next to David Icke and, one or two others. Just incredible. So Leo, appreciate your time. And we're going to talk about your new book, The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, Exposing Jeffrey Epstein and the Most Powerful Jewish Sect in the World. So, I'm into this book, and I couldn't put it down once I started it. It's really ties together so many things that I've never really made the connection to, and it's just perfect timing, as we said.
Absolutely.
So. Where do you think the best? I think the best place to start probably is a Frankist monster. And I love the artwork that my editor will show for my viewing audience, of this Frankenstein, Jeffrey Epstein kind of montage that you put together. And
it's a cut-up technique, which usually is used by my graphic designer. Vincenzo Viceversa is an artist who I've been knowing since the end of the 80s. And we collaborated in my past when I was a record producer and a DJ. And he's also, really had his own experience when it comes down to symbolism. He was in his youth involved with the Temple of Psychic Youth.
Okay.
And then later on, he abandoned that for a different kind of approach, as he embraced a more Christian, let's say, background.
Gotcha.
So today, when I work with him, I kind of rely what my book is, and we try to transfer those ideas in images.
Yeah.
The cut up technique means that he cuts up different things and he
Yeah.
paste them together in a very artistic way.
Yes.
That's also his specialty. And this time, of course, is this cut up, which puts together the traditional Frankenstein monster
Yeah. With Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah.
Which was kind
It's
of
fantastic.
interesting this morning to see. I think I was on what is known now as MS Now. It used to be MSNBC, and there was a guy what is the Morning Joe show, which I watch for a laugh at times. And the guy was like, because just like Frankenstein, Jeffrey Epstein was
wow,
built.
He said that?
Yeah, and I was
wow.
Like, wow. I was like surprised. Because at the end of the day, this is not really a political issue. It's something that, of course, America wants to know more about, but probably even now with the eventual disclosure we hope we will have, it's going to always be partial,
of course.
like I stated in the introduction, because you're never going to see the videos that compromise powerful people or any other kind of compromising material. Of course, maybe there will be some.
Yeah, there'll be some leaks and some tit for tats that they manage to score on each other. But for the most part, we're going to get a big old redacted mess of documents, which, you know,
and with this book, as you know, I really dig deeper than that because, you know, regardless of the of Jeffrey Epstein and of course Ghislaine Maxwell and his milieu of people, as they are portrayed today for years by the media, who has done a bunch of articles, documentaries and whatnot. So, I mean, adding something to all this will be very difficult, you might think, but they never really touched on the ancestry of these people or their real background. Which connects them to this one big club, and we are not in it. As I wrote, citing, of course, a famous.
Who said that? George Carlin. Yeah.
Yes. But I think that today the Americans have understood with this scandal that no matter if you are a Democrat, you are a Republican, you will never really have a real populist party, a real populist politician in the White House, because it's really strong, the level of compromise.
That's right. It's enormous.
That kind of situation.
I say to people, if you want to understand the level of compromise, look at a picture of Kash Patel before he was sworn in, or before they did whatever they did to him. And then look at a picture of him afterwards. Look at his eyes. You know, he's like, he looks like a deer caught in headlights. He can't, like, he didn't walk around like that before. There's all kinds of footage of him. And he was like very cool, relaxed, you know, openly stated, you know, targeting the deep state, and, you know, had a lot of things to say about a lot of people.
Same can be said about Dan Bongino. I mean, he was one of my favorites.
Oh, Dan Bongino is another one. Yeah.
When I drive with my car around, I put this radio show on. Just like, I like the fact that he was quite outspoken about a number of issues.
Yeah. And now
it's a disappointment, because every time people get called in to be part of an administration, the administration at some point gets compromised. I don't think that it was so compromised in the first presidency.
I don't think so either, but now,
Now there is also the fact that you are reaching the end of a career once you end your second mandate in the White House. And so you have to look about for your future, the future of your family's interest and so on, which might not always be the interest of the American people. I mean,
you can say that again.
When you have a crook from Saudi Arabia, you know, presiding and being invited with the, you know,
my God,
and the whole show, and then even Elon Musk going back into the White House in this very
just recently, the terrorist who they had invited in, that who you're referring to?
Yeah, the prince, the terrorist.
Well, I mean, he's like, wasn't he like on our like top 5
No,
terror?
no, I'm not talking about the Syrian president. I'm
Oh,
talking
okay,
about
okay, that's right.
Mohammed bin Salman,
Oh,
who
okay.
who is the de facto ruler of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who
Right.
was received yesterday in the
Oh,
White
that's
House
right.
as this
Candlelit.
whole event, unprecedented event of the vote that went in the House and then in the Senate. Really
Mm.
shows that most politicians, when they are put under pressure, of course, they
Oh,
will
yeah.
vote for what is going to make them look better.
Right.
But
And it's going to save their hide, they're going to
yeah,
save their
yeah, yeah,
skin
yeah.
every
But
time.
in this work of mine, as you know, the politics are a small part of this
Yes, it
whole
is.
thing
It,
because
it
they are
focuses.
they are the puppets.
Mhm.
I, of course, mentioned Trump a few
Yes, you
times
do.
in the book, but I don't take sides on
Right.
things because I simply bring out the facts.
Right.
And I think that is the best thing to do as a journalist if you don't want to be a bias. And plus, this is not only journalistic work, this is also a historic work. So a work that should have been done by historian, maybe of an academic level, but unfortunately today, like I stated in my book, there's very few people that even in Israel or in the Jewish community wants
They
to
don't
touch
know.
the subject because it's inconvenient to put into discussion
That's right.
the very essence that then goes and creates the state of Israel.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
glad that
maybe
you have gone through the book, and I'm glad that you will be able to do the right questions.
right, and I, the first question that was answered for me in the book that I think is very relevant, particularly to your title, is like, what is obviously there's a symbolism and there's a metaphor and with Frankenstein, but Frankist is a Frankist monster. It's referring to more than that. It has a lot more meaning, and people are looking at what is happening and right now and what's been happening with some of the parts of Israeli government that are, very, very unconscionable, it seems at time. And they're trying to reconcile what they understand about Judaism and about the actions of this nation that is claiming to be the home state of all Jews around the world. And what I found in your book is like, so you start to trace it back to when things, started to go south and when these alternative and heretical, is the word you used, ideas are introduced and then begin to be adopted by parts of mainstream Judea. And then there's a lot of conversions that happen. But I think that's a great place to start. When you say Frankist, can you give everyone the historical context of that?
Well, Frankist is a sect that derives from the Sabbatean, one that was initially a movement within Judaism in the 17th century with Shabbatai Zevi, recognized as a Messiah from most of the Jewish people, or at least more than half of
What
the Jewish
century was
people.
that?
That was the 17th century.
17th. That's right. The 17th century.
So we have, two important figures that, of course, are connected in what then we generally refer to as Sabbatean Frankism or Sabbatean Frankist. The Sabbatean Frankists are, of course, like I said, a product of a prior religious movement that was then forced into becoming a sect once their leader converted to Islam, which didn't make any sense for the
Right.
majority of Jews. However, the guy who was behind Shabbatai Zevi, who proclaimed himself Messiah, who encouraged them to proclaim himself Messiah in that
Time
no,
period. Yeah.
no, in that place, which is now at the center of all attentions, which is Gaza. Nathan
Ah,
of Gaza was himself the sort of John the Baptist figure behind
right.
Shabbatai Zevi. Shabbatai Zevi wasn't really yet sure if proclaiming himself Messiah until he was encouraged by Nathan Gaza. And at that point, Shabbatai Zevi is somebody who proclaims himself to be the Messiah, but then soon after he ends up converting to Islam, because otherwise he would be beheaded by
Right.
the Ottoman Sultan. So
That's right.
all this comes from, of course, the big interest that in that time period there was for both topics, the Messiah topic as well as the Talmud and the Kabbalah, viewed in the light of the Lurianic Kabbalah of Isaac Luria. So there was a lot of interest within the Jewish society, since there was this deep interest. Then there was, of course, the Zohar became the book that kickstarted this interest.
What was it called? The Zohar?
The Zohar.
How do you spell that? How do you spell that?
The Zohar, Zohar.
Oh, the Zohar. Okay, just making sure.
And the Book of Splendor, of Radiance. It's a book that was allegedly maybe written based on the teachings of a certain Simeon ben Yochai, but it was made known by a guy called Moses de Leon. We're talking about here the 13th century, more or less.
Oh, okay.
So a few centuries before the Sabbateans came around, there was this Zohar. The Zohar then introduced a series of themes, of subjects that, according to Gershon Scholem, which, as you know, I cite a lot in my book, because he was a great expert on the Sabbatean Frankist, and one of the few academics who really dedicated years of his life in exposing this missing link in Jewish history. And of course, the Zohar was also part of Kabbalah, and Gershon Scholem was a great scholar when it came down to Kabbalah. So there was a linguistic fusion, let's say, between Babylonian Talmud and the Targum Onkelos, which and at the same time, which is the primary Jewish Aramaic that is used in the Torah.
Right.
However,
that was when the Babylonian Talmud started to fuse with the traditional Torah, or at least what was the traditional Torah back then, right?
Yes, because the traditional Torah consists in 5 books, which we are calling as Christians the Pentateuch in the Old Testament.
Right.
Now, what happens is that the actual, then you have the oral Torah, which is another element, which is more kind of interpretative. With the Sabbateans, things get a little bit messy, though, because Shabbatai Zevi introduces a range of really, tendency for heretical rituals, ritually fostered, and overstepping of established religious laws, which is in reality known as antinomian. And then you have this strong Kabbalistic influence that starts to utilize, of course, the Kabbalistic terminology in the writings of Nathan of Gaza, but the interpretation becomes somehow, even if there is still a strong emphasis on the Messianic or Redeemer tradition, it becomes, it shows emphasis on the dark and demonic powers.
That's right. That's what I was going to ask. These concepts.
The clipot.
Right. But like, so when people are trying to understand this, what I want to make sure they're clear about is like, so this was the first time that the introduction of things that were obviously logically nonsensical, but he was presenting them as a way to manifest divinity,
First of all, we have to understand this. There is a trio of false messiahs that comes along and changes forever the course of Judaism. It starts with Shabbatai Zevi. Then at the end of the 17th century, it manifests in what we have with Baruch Russo, and then we have 100 years after the birth of Shabbatai Zevi, the birth of his heir, who claims to be his reincarnation, which is Jacob Frank.
Oh,
They are
Jacob
not
Frank. That's
related.
right.
Jacob Frank. They are not related in
Right. He
reality.
claims to be the reincarnation of
Yeah,
him.
because the reincarnation element is accepted by certain Orthodox,
Right.
by what now we call Orthodox, but in reality, there is only one form of Judaism, because, if you now go into Judaism, it's like going into a supermarket in which you can shop
Right.
this or this other option. In reality, Moses offered one view,
Right.
which then is relayed in the Pentateuch, which is the 10 Commandments and 615 laws that need to be practiced in order to be a Jew that is in somehow coherent with his tradition. Now, today, unfortunately, that doesn't happen, and that's why my book starts with this decadence of the Jewish faith, which becomes also the decadence of the Jewish people. It becomes also the decadence of the ethics and morals that make today possible for pedophiles to
That's right.
to be covered and to practice impunely this terrible thing, like Jeffrey Epstein. There is many other Jeffrey
Right.
Epstein, to tell you the truth, in Israel. But of course, Jeffrey Epstein was somebody at a worldwide level who
Right.
was working with the elite of the Sabbatean Frankists. The Sabbatean Frankist elite is the one that, thanks to Jacob Frank, so historically, just so your audience can understand a little bit, Shabbatai Zevi becomes relevant for the Islamic war, the Ottoman Empire. Then his successor, Baruch Russo, becomes relevant for the Dommeh, who were those Jews who converted to Islam but continued to practice this heretical form of Judaism.
Right.
And then on top of that, you have Jacob Franco comes along. He was originally born in Podolia, actually in present-day Ukraine, and he arrives from there in Thessaloniki, which had become the hotspot. Now, Thessaloniki today is called Thessaloniki. It used to be called, it had a different name,
Right.
Thessalonica, and it was part of the Ottoman Empire. Today it's part of Greece.
Right.
In fact, 100 years ago, there was actually an exchange agreement when, you see, the Ottoman Empire came to an end.
Right.
And then at that point, Greece became independent. It was, of course, then they were sent back to Turkey, these Dommeh. Some of them stayed in Greece. Some of them, like I explained in my book, went back. Most of them integrated, and the Dommeh culture became much more irrelevant and secretive, though. Instead, the Sabbatean Frankist culture, which spread through Eastern and Central Europe, that became very influential, especially because it went and influenced the birthplaces of what we know as the Hasidic faith, one of the most important branches of Orthodox Judaism, the Yiddish language speaking people, the Ashkenazi in particular, who then will be, of course, part of a mass immigration towards also the United States. So
Right.
the Sabbatean Frankists are those Frankists who have embraced Sabbateanism. But Jacob Frank, on the contrary of Shabbatai Zevi, he converted also to Islam at one point briefly. That is not really well known, and most
Right.
people tend to ignore that. But he focused on the Catholic faith, bringing to conversion 20,000 Jews. Together with his family, he was involved with a relative of his known as Moses Dobruska, and later Thomas Schoenfield, Baron, in the very foundation of the Asiatic Brethren. And that is really a very important element in our story, because the Asiatic Brethren become one of the most influential,
The Asiatic Brethren, right?
the Asiatic Brethren, or the Asiatic Bruder, as they were called in German, become one of the most influential groups, let's say, within the Western initiatic system. So with the Shabbatai Zevi, we start this deviance from Judaism, breaking all the laws of Judaism, practicing things that are deliberately ridiculous for a normal Jew. I mean, eating pork in consecrated holy days of Judaism, or indulging in orgies, wife swapping. But most of all, if we have to take it in an esoteric context, as I know your views and your audience are based mostly on that kind of emphasis, I would say that the dark and demonic powers that are ingrained in every man's constitution and oppose each act of salvation were at the basis of these practices. So the clipotic powers. Now, the clipot is something, I don't know if you ever...
What's it called again?
The clipot.
How do you spell that? I'm trying to hear the word. It's tough with your accent.
Yes, is something that you will find also in the teachings, for example, of Kenneth Grant, emphasizes the importance of this darker aspect, let's say, of the Kabbalah. Clipot is spelled Qlippoth.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the clipot in Night Side of Eden, Kenneth Grant, who used to be secretary of Aleister Crowley and stuff, he explored the tunnels of Set, pathways corresponding to the clipotic trees. The clipot were these dark shell. I mean, we can consider them precursors of the demons.
Right. So, I mean, and then then you get into like, they were called the synagogue of Satan, but then it seems like, well, when that was said, it was a long time ago, but
you see, there is then a problem here that I tend, in fact, to underline during the course of the book, because this is not an anti-Semitic book. In fact,
no, it's not.
It received the praises of the Hasidic people in the Hasidic community, even people from religious Zionism who felt betrayed by the whole thing in the last few years, who said, Leo, you have been very respectful of our tradition, and you have never really done anything that can be deemed as anti-Semitic. Because you actually, for example, debunk the conspiracies that are today very current, like the Khazarian Mafia, which is based on complete rubbish, which I dedicate a whole chapter to, as well as the fact that I explained that is a little bit like the Catholics. I can't say that all Catholics,
of course,
are corrupt, but I can definitely, like I did in my books,
yes, you did.
Jesuits, critique those progressive forces that are now taking hostage the Catholic Church. I mean, I can't generalize, so it's not. And also, there is a difference between the race and the ideology of the religion that takes
absolutely,
because otherwise we become racist. And that is the very essence of the word racist.
And so, as a researcher as well read as you, and because I can't think of another people who have an ethnicity that doubles as a religion, and I'm wondering.
There is. I mean, for example, you have the Sikh in India, which we can say they're, well, maybe if you want to focus on a specific race and their religious background, we could, in a way, consider all the Russians Orthodox Christians, because that's where they came from. Of course, then we had that interlude of the Soviet Union that kind of brushed off that religious essence, but is now coming back, being part of the whole ethnicity. Of course, we have also minor religions here and there, which are specifically linked to a race. But having said that, there is always part of a race that embraces things and part of a race that doesn't embrace things.
Right.
I mean, even within the Jewish world, what does the Sabbatean Frankist element constitute? It constitutes a moment of breaking, but it also, for example, with the Masonic and Illuminati element, participate to what is known as the Jewish Enlightenment, which then brings to that secularized Judaism, which is really far away from religion. So So there is also that input that maybe a sect like the Sabbatean Frankists can have, and that is even, like I explain in my book, at times endorsed by modern historians in Israel who claim, well, they are the basis of great things like feminism. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate feminism, or I hate maybe certain leftist things that nowadays they claim have the roots within the Sabbatean Frankism.
Yeah. The reason why I mention that is because, there's a lot of people, like myself included, that believe that the effort to conflate Zionism with Judaism, and the effort to conflate and the trap is to stereotype Jews around the world. No, you do, but
Actually,
I'm trying to trace.
actually showing that Zionism itself was partly born because of Puritans in the Christian world.
That's what the book is showcasing, and I understand that. What I'm trying to figure out is, do you think that this trap that has been set, I think, to that baits people into stereotyping all Jews around the world, half of which are secular anyway, with Zionism and the actions of Israel? Do you think that was done deliberately by, like, let's say, the Rothschilds, in order to protect their interests and also be able to scream, well, you're just racist, you're an anti-Semite?
Who are the Rothschilds? I mean, in my book, the Rothschilds are well defined. They are part of the Sabbatean Frankist cult.
Right.
Frankists in particular, with Jacob Frank, entered in Frankfurt and were at the center of the attention of the future banking establishment, including the Rothschild. The Rothschild themselves were protagonists in various parts of Europe, which had somehow given in to the Sabbatean Frankist heresy, and they were very much endorsing. If we want to go even deeper, we can say that the Rothschild, some of the Rothschild, not all of them, but they were directly involved even with the lodges of the Asiatic Brethren in their financing, including the one in Frankfurt. So and then we have Jacob Frank, that at the end of his life,
Jacob Frank,
moves outside of Frankfurt in Offenbach, in the greater metropolitan area of Frankfurt, and then creates a court, almost, like he was nobilitated. He was an aristocrat at that point, and he was treated as such, and he had a whole castle where he was receiving all these very powerful people.
Wow.
So the actual thing that you are telling me, the Rothschild. Yeah, but the Rothschild are just one of the many families, because when you go through this book, you find many others also.
Right.
And you find people and families that are deliberately staying in the shadow.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the Rothschild, they were kind of pushed out of the shadows because their banking work in
so huge.
historic occasions, and even the fact that they were involved with the Vatican for a long time kind of brought them out of the closet, let's say. But the Sabbatean Frankist identity is very visible in how they have sold themselves and how they have practiced not really traditional Judaism, but at the same time they became very much involved from the Balfour Declaration onwards. The very layout of the State of Israel. But I repeat, it's one family. Here we're talking about a whole bunch of people who are the ones.
One big club.
One big club that goes and finances people like Jeffrey Epstein, in the rise of Jeffrey Epstein, and also in Ghislaine Maxwell's rise. We see that there is a big help from these people. Without Robert Maxwell, I don't think Jeffrey Epstein would have, but also without Les Wexner, without Donald Barr, without people who have really helped him out in becoming who he was. And that's why there is a very big misunderstanding at the moment, because they say, you see, Jeffrey Epstein was working for Israel. No, it's the other way around. In fact, now a lot of people, including the young Turks who do, with the check, he's saying, he's kind of shocked, about what is coming out in these mails and things. But this demonstrates that basically Jeffrey Epstein was more powerful than a former Israeli prime minister like Ehud Barak, or was more powerful than. So that makes him one of the most powerful men in the world. How is that possible? They don't understand the fact that in reality, when you say Jeffrey Epstein worked they're starting to realize through the,
Right.
they don't know that the Mossad, the Shin Bet, the State of Israel, they all work for
The
the
CIA, the
They work for
MI6.
the, yeah, and then of course
Absolutely.
MI6, we saw MI6, MI5 linked directly also to Robert Maxwell, who,
Right.
by the way, was not even his name. And so they are working for, it's not the other way around. It's like, for many years, people like me, people like David Icke, many other people, have said that there is an elite, and there is, of course, an elite that directs things and directs these intelligence
Of course.
services. It seems like for a lot of journalists now a surprise and even a shock that certain truths are coming out, and they can't really understand the whole thing, because even the average folk today will say, yes, Jeffrey Epstein, he was working for Mossad. No, wrong. Mossad was working for Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
And behind him. So, or MI6 was working.
Or CIA, yeah.
Or the CIA, that's why they acted in this way, and they're still acting in this way, and they're very afraid of covering up the traces of these links. Because, of course, we had the mega group, which I talk about in the
right.
book.
That's the literal name of this group. It's called the mega group, right?
Yeah, and it's not making Europe great again. It should
No,
be
it's
called.
not.
It should actually be called the MIGA group, make Israel great again.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, it's very problematic, I think, for people to accept this, because we have now a state of Israel which is created as a reality, and like I say in my book, it's a reality that needs to be accepted, because after all this persecution, after millions of people who have been put in concentration camps, after pogroms, after the Sabbatean Frankists have basically persecuted their own people more than anyone else.
That's the thing people don't realize,
Yeah, so it is actually the main thing that people seem to have a problem with in the interpretation, and then that will inevitably bring them to anti-Semitism, to generalize, to hate the whole Jewish people or the state of Israel. I'm not saying that Benjamin Netanyahu is my hero. Absolutely not.
No,
I'm not saying that other figures within Israel are, nowadays we see, for example, we had just recently several officers wounded in a clash with settlers. And this is a part of the agent provocateurs that, in the Gush Etzion area near Palestine town of Sair are acting, and you have all these Israeli settlements which are considered illegal under international law.
Well, yeah.
And it's, of course, all used in an instrumental way by the Sabbatean Frankists.
Right.
So it's...
What's their end game? Because they're obviously still using it. They're still pushing it. They're still technically breaking international law. They're still stealing land. We see videos on social media daily of settlers.
The problem is that most of these settlers, they are brainwashed and manipulated, just like any other person in this planet who is pushed to do things that they might think they are of their own making and of their own interest, but it's a reality.
And they have the IDF to guard them, and make sure that they are not harmed.
But having said that, once you obviously start saying these things, there will be inevitably somebody who will say, you see, it's the Jews, you see, it's Israel. And that is the thing that the Sabbatean Frankists actually want.
That's what I was getting to.
You see that they have always operated like that, even before the Holocaust. Even before the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And they operated like this in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And every time they have operated so they could, and even Theodor Herzl, the very founder of Zionism, claimed that there should be an instrumental use of anti-Semitism, which is like...
Yeah.
I mean, it's very difficult. But once you prove these things, I must say, the the Jewish people in Israel, and actually outside also of Israel, who follow my work,
Yeah.
they are telling me, Leo, well, you are right. You are right. So it's like, you know, you're right, because even, you know, I cite also in my book a guy called Rabbi Marvin Antelman. And I cite also a late friend of mine called Barry Kamish. Barry Kamish was a little bit less of a religious Zionist, but Rabbi Antelman was a religious Zionist. A religious Zionist kind of were tricked into supporting this whole thing, because it's almost like Zionism came around as a project within the Masonic English Church of England establishment. Everybody was kind of following also British Israelism, which was this great lie that was pushed from the times of Oliver Cromwell, in order to also get the elite in Great Britain, in the United Kingdom, to believe that they were especially linked with Israel. So they had a special link.
Right.
And so when the mandatory Palestine, when you have the English who were actually ruling, the British were ruling that area after the Ottoman Empire was forced to crumble.
Right.
And forced to crumble by who? If we go and study volume 10 of my Confessions, then you see that all that Masonic Dome establishment within the Ottoman Empire that in the end cracked the Ottoman Empire, which I mentioned also in this book when I talk about the Young Turks, for example, in particular.
Right.
It was like to facilitate France and England and Great Britain to take basically the whole Middle East. And then, of course, we see Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabi, as another religious product of this whole thing, the Salafi, the fundamentalism. So here is not really restricted to one religion, the damage that even these Jewish messiahs had, because inevitably, once you, like Jacob Frank and Moses Dobrusk in particular, which becomes Thomas Schoenfeld, introduce these teachings within the lodges of Freemasonry and the Illuminati,
Right.
then it becomes a much larger thing, because there is an integration of both esoteric as well as practical alchemy, but then it becomes also an integration like of, for example, with the philosophie sociale, of the social philosophy, of modernization, of politics, of things that have actually to do with the real world.
Right.
So we find in Frankism a tendency to reinforce military customs. We have an application of hierarchical structures. We have
Of the what structures?
Hierarchical. So it's
the
like
hierarchical.
in the hierarchy. You have an autocratic leader as the head of the organization.
Yeah.
And this also explains from time to time the accusations that then were moved against the Jews through the protocols of the Sages of Zion, which, by the way, as you know, already in volume 10 of my Confessions, I had explained were to be interpreted as the protocols of the Sabbatean Frankists.
Right. Because that's what they always were. Absolutely.
Well, that was they always were. So the fact that we had then this mix, that this alliance, let's say, with the Catholic world, it's a very important alliance that we need to make people understand. It's an alliance that became initially through the conversion 20,000 Jews embracing Catholicism and also embracing the surnames of those godfathers that were given for the baptism. Then at the same time, later on, the infiltration of the nobility, the aristocracy, first of the Catholic world and then of the Church of England, through marriages, which will not be possible if you were a traditional Jew who
you wouldn't be allowed.
But because there was this flexibility also due to the fact that they were expanding, and then there was this very interesting, this link between late Renaissance magic, our modern occult traditions in the West, through these esoteric elements. These esoteric elements, I'm talking about esoteric elements that are included first in the Asiatic Brethren. I would say that with the B'nai Brit you have less esotericism and more practical control of things, because the B'nai Brit is a big fraternal organization based on Freemasonry.
What's it called again? The brain.
B'nai Brit. B'nai Brit is the largest fraternal organization today of Jews, with millions of adherents around the world. Each capital city in the world has a club, lodge, basically.
Oh, okay.
Until the 1920s, they were more formal and more like the Freemasons with their, with their whole regalia and stuff.
Right.
They like to impress in that kind.
And then what happened?
Then they saw that they had to be more practical. They had to maybe become less noticed publicly, and that being attached to the Masonic kind of imagery was not really helping them out, especially because, remember, in the 1920s and then in the 1930s, then we see the rise of Nazism.
Right.
And then we have the persecution of the Jews in Germany, who were, let's say, the largest group outside of the United States that embraced this B'nai Brit, which was founded originally in New York by German Jews.
Right.
So the B'nai Brit was and is today a paramasonic organization. They still have probably their own secret rituals and whatever, but they tend to become more and more close to the think tank or the club, like the Lions or the Rotary, than the traditional, more esoteric forms of Freemasonry, because that trend kind of went, it was absorbed by the elite and was kept within closer groups, insider groups within the B'nai Brit.
Right.
That is where we find a lot of people also involved with the rise of Donald Trump.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Do you think that, would you make a case based on your research that it was actually the Sabbatean Franks, or at least that sect that funded and allowed for the rise of Nazism?
That is something that in my book becomes very obvious when we talk about the agreement, that the transfer agreement,
the Havara agreement,
yes, that was put in place between the
Zionists and the Nazis,
yes, in a pivotal moment in history, after the election of Adolf Hitler. The B'nai Brit, which at the time already had, let's say, control of the whole banking system on behalf of the Sabbatean Frankists, could have opposed the whole thing, but in reality they made a deal which is still to this day very difficult to understand even for Jewish people.
Of course.
A book that was published in the early 80s, in 1984, called The Transfer Agreement by Edwin Black, to really start bringing out in the open a matter that was considered somehow shameless, even for the Jews themselves. But that is also the whole thing connecting to the very birth of the Shoah, because then,
of the what?
The Holocaust, as it's called, the Shoah originally, that's how it should be called. Then, the Holocaust is also another term that Unterman was very specific, the burning offering. It's almost like a human sacrifice, that you are implying. So, in reality, the burning offering is not a term that should be used even for the Holocaust. It should simply be, because the word Holocaust in ancient Greek means burnt offering.
Right.
And that is obvious. I mean, a Holocaust is, in the traditional interpretation, a religious animal sacrifice.
Right.
That is completely consumed by fire, also known as the burnt offering. Do
Right.
you want to call a tragedy like the Shoah something that obviously refers to a human sacrifice of sorts? I don't think so.
No.
But because of the ignorance of the majority of people, yes, let's call it the Holocaust. Let's be open about
Well,
it.
and it worked for what they were going for anyway. You know, they were trying to leverage all of Palestine, and they needed, you know, as much as they could thrust upon the world to justify that. You know,
It's always we go back to the transfer agreement. Like I explained in my book, still, even after the Balfour Declaration, after they have been for years, actually for centuries at that point, from the very start of the Sabbateans to then the Sabbatean Frankists, a push towards going back to Israel, the majority of Jewish people will have probably stayed in Germany or in their own countries, because they didn't really want to go down to this place that at the time seemed very hostile, even in nature. Apart from the fact that they were also the indigenous people of Arab descent there, so you have to deal with also that.
Right.
That is a problem that has not been, you know.
No, obviously they're still dealing with that. Yeah.
So I think that we need to understand that if today we have the state of Israel, it's because of all this persecution, and also of the fact that at one point in that period, the Jews, when the persecution started after the transfer agreement that led to the Holocaust, the Jews were sent back when they were trying to come here to America, when they were going to England.
Right. They weren't allowed to go anywhere else. Yeah.
So what are you going to do now? You're going to persecute the descendants because you send them here and there and everywhere, but you didn't want them in your home, and you want them, and you sent them there, and now they are there stuck in a situation that is obviously not peaceful, but by your own creation. So your own governments should be responsible. And those own governments is not the United States of America necessarily, because the United States of America played a very small role still in international politics until the Second World War.
Right.
So we need to talk about England, Great Britain, the great responsibility of Great Britain, France, Germany, Europe, basically, in essence, and Russia.
Yeah.
But these countries will never, acknowledge that the Sabbatean Frankists led them to do something like that.
They created a monster. Yeah.
Like I said, the Shoah, which I prefer as a term because the Shoah means catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much better term than Holocaust.
Right.
No?
Yeah.
Seems, for me, at least. And then when you understand that Adolf Hitler's background was Sabbatean Frankist, he came from Austrian Sabbatean stronghold, Frankist stronghold, in a ritual that he was produced in with this gram, in 1888, he was conceived. I mean, these things need to be addressed to have a full understanding of the level that then you have, of course, the alliance between Hitler and the Grand Mufti, who was Arafat's uncle, who then encourages him into the Holocaust, and so you have this link also with Islam. But didn't Sabbatai Zevi himself have a link with Islam and his
literally
followers?
Yeah, I'll say he did. Yeah.
I mean, he embraced it. So he then inserted elements of Islam into the Sabbatean reality that then are still kept by Jacob Frank. I mean, like we said at the beginning of the interview, Jacob Frank was also linked to the Muslim world, not only to the Catholic world. And at the same time, though, he was also linked to the Orthodox world through his his work that he was doing undercover, that then brought him, in fact, under the eyes of the Inquisition and to be arrested.
That's right.
actually freed by the Russians at one point in this monastery of Czestochowa, where you have the worship to this day of the Black Mary, the Holy Mary. I think that the Nazis and the fact that so many Jews died, so then they could establish the state.
Yeah, that's why they call it a Holocaust. I think
it's a sacrifice that the Sabbatean Frankists did
That's
on
right.
their own people.
That's right.
But it's not understandable for the majority of people
No,
who generalize Jews and say they are one unitarian force.
Right. No, they don't understand the nuance. Yeah, but
So my book tries to break that.
it does.
And I'm glad that you have appreciated it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's fascinating the education you give about the word golem and about the Frankenstein, the famous novel that everyone knows that was written by Mary what was her last name? Shelby, I think.
Mary Shelley.
That's right. Like the level of allegory, it's just it's mind blowing, and you have a little part where you wrote, very, very relevant to what's happening with this seemingly endless persecution that is going on against, other than like the ethnos supremacy that we're seeing exert itself, where it comes from. And you mentioned in your book that her name was Courtney Turner, and she wrote an article about it,
Yes.
which showcased like
She has actually a great show. I go guest.
oh, nice.
Now and then on Rambo. I mean, she's definitely an author that I follow because her research seems to be very much spot on.
Yeah, and she explained in one. She said that Epstein's empire intersected with the Santa Fe Institute, where he donated $275,000, and Jim Rutt was the board, all this stuff. But then she writes more provocatively, Epstein invested $40 million in Valor Ventures, which is a firm co-founded by Peter Thiel, the PayPal billionaire transhumanist who everyone is, realizing doesn't have the best ideas for humanity, who funds longevity research and liberal eugenics, literally via embryo section startups like companies like Orchid. And as of June of 2025, that stake had ballooned to $170 million, which was the largest asset in Epstein's estate. That's what per reports. And Peter Thiel's orbit has only gotten bigger. But it's just crazy. You could see that using AI and control.
What is Lex Wexner doing today? You think Lex Wexner has stopped making money? He has continued.
Of course.
He has been, of course, the principal guy in the development of Abercrombie and Fitch, Victoria's Secret, and La Senza.
Right.
Today, if we go and see what he's doing today, he's actually still making money connected to the AI and healthcare. And he's
AKA for them eugenics.
Yes, I mean Lex Wexner hasn't given up making money because Jeffrey Epstein
That's for sure.
didn't have any kind of connection to this scandal legally wise, because he has not received any criminal involvement.
Of course.
I mean, his actually family, Russian Jewish, like the family of Epstein. His father was born in Russia. His mother was born in Brooklyn, like Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
So these people have, and that's what really my books brings out, that no other research on Jeffrey Epstein, a family business, a tribe business, because it's also very tribal if you think in nature what happened to the Sabbateans and then the Sabbatean Frankists. It's kind of tribal because they become a tribe within their own people. So
Right.
you have, of course, everybody focused on the 12 tribes of Israel, whatever, the lost tribe or this and that. But then they created their own inner tribe.
Right.
And that tribe is the most influential when it comes down to, because when you have, for example, Wexner, people don't realize that he won in 1953 an award on an essay that was published in the Ohio Jewish Chronicle. You know how it was called?
What?
Why I Love and Respect Judaism. I mean, if you follow the history of Les Wexner, there is nothing really that has anything to do with that traditional Judaism.
Right. Right. We see it time and time again.
And so it's like these people have done everything possible to destroy their faith, but at the same time, they proclaim themselves as the main defenders. That is a typical attitude of these people.
It's a strategy. It's a tactic.
So, and then we talked about the AI. Les Wexner, like I said, is involved in AI through his investments in the AI cloud company CoreWave, which provides the computing power for AI development. And it's like bringing AI and tech companies to Central Ohio as we speak. So he's still active after all these years. We are in the year 2025. I mean, this guy was publishing essays in 1953. I mean, it's just like, and they continue until very late in their age. Watch Kissinger. He was influential until he was 100 years old, and then
That's
he died.
right. Yeah. That's for sure. He was.
So if Epstein was kept alive, he would have been very influential for decades to come.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. What do you think is how do you see this playing out? And like, with what's going on and what's left of the Palestinian people, and like, where does it go from here? How does it get resolved? What do you foresee happening?
I keep on saying that their plan, generally speaking, and this doesn't involve only Judaism, but all faiths, is to go towards a one-world religion with the AI at the apex of it all. So also a relentless belief that science is the solution of all problems in this, the Lexley Wexner of the situation, the other people who have created the mega group will continue being the elite of, let's say, the B'nai Brit, like the Illuminati were the elite of Freemasonry.
Right.
And that also, when you said that Frankenstein has many meanings, including one connected directly to the fact that Dr. Frankenstein himself is depicted as going to school in Ingolstadt, where they founded the Illuminati. So there's a pretty clear and direct the little St. James Island becomes a tourist attraction.
Wow.
And a tourist is actually, they painted in white the temple on top of the island.
Yeah.
To almost purify it from, the impurity of Jeffrey Epstein, which will never be, they should bring, 100 exorcists there and bless the whole place over again. But in my view, where we are heading is that they will try to brush off this thing as soon as they can. In the meantime, they will expose just small parts of it, like we stated at the beginning, cherry picking what they want to expose for their own benefit, of course, because it's not
political gain, I'm sure. Yeah.
And so if they want to if they want to throw somebody under the bus, this is the right time to do it, including Trump himself.
Of course, yeah.
Trump himself, of course, is going towards then the end of his political career, and the only thing that is left in his political career will have been to leave a better legacy of himself, something that I'm sad to say he might not be able to do.
I don't see it happening.
I mean, still hope.
I mean, when he first got elected, I really thought that he might be able to make a difference, but it seems like he's just been so compromised. He's fallen right in line, you
But
know.
the compromise comes from a system which is completely compromised, like I describe in my book from the very start. So it's not like we can, I mean, who you gonna have to save the day when politics is about money?
That's right. That's exactly right. Nobody. It's
And
impossible.
in the mind of the religious Zionists, who are now starting to realize that even their position is not so.
Yeah.
They had a rabbi who was called Rabbi Koch, who was a very important figure when it comes to the Balfour Declaration. He was the first chief rabbi of the Palestine Mandate. Was at the time the British control, before they of course founded Israel. But he viewed war as a potential catalyst for redemption.
Yeah.
So they don't care about necessarily all the mess that is being created, because they see it as facilitating the Jewish return to Zion and advancing the divine plan for
They're all about it.
renewal. And that is also embraced by the so-called Christian Zionists.
Hugely.
And conflicts like World War I, and the struggles of the early Zionists are seen almost as a part of an historical process that leads to the beginning of the flowering of a redemption. It's almost like going back to the very basis of Sabbatean Frankism, redemption through sin. Redemption through doing something really wrong, and
that's
those sparkles of light that they claim will come out of it.
Poison pill.
It is definitely a incredible time we are living in.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I hope that with our show we have somehow brought some. We have cleared this matter. And if you want to clear it further, of course, I advise you to go and purchase the book and read it and study it like you did.
If you pick this book up, you won't be able to put it down. It's really easy to. It's surprisingly easy to read. You know, the information is very, very fluent. It's not like Whitney Webb's book, which is just like so much information with like. It's an easy read, and that's what I'm saying. And Leo,
I try to make it easy.
You did a great job. You know, like I try to read Whitney Webb's books, and I'm like, my God, my brain starts to hurt. But your books they're just easy to read. You know, they flow.
I started, as you know, publishing books a long time ago.
That's right.
I realized that initially I might have been a little bit difficult to digest, because I was kind of like so eager to bring out all this information and really, throw a bunch of things to the reader in a way that at times my books, the initial ones, functions more as manuals than as actual books. This one is part of it's not the Confessions. It's a new path. Also in my literary work, which it wants to bring the reader to be acquainted with very complex matters, but in a still digestible way.
Right, in a historically vetted and accurate and digestible way, and that's what you did. And as someone who has read a bunch of the what do you call them? Different editions of Confessions of an Illuminati. And reading this book, you've gotten better and better with your writing, and it's always a pleasure to have you on my show. So the name of just so everyone, if you're just catching Leo for the first time, you got to go back and listen to our other two podcasts, because they're one is more mind blowing than the next, and his books are incredible. Confessions of an Illuminati has a whole series. How many books total was there?
Confessions of an Illuminati is 12 books, 12 volumes, which are almost like an encyclopedia of everything that you ever wanted to know about.
The history of everything.
These powers at work in the upper echelons of our society that we commonly refer to as the Illuminati. And it starts from volume 1 all the way to volume 12, where you have the apex of it with the Jesuits. Along the way, there is also, of course, mentions about the Sabbatean Frankists, like in volume 7 or in
Right.
other volumes.
Secret societies are covered.
Yeah, and also some links so that there might be the Sabbateans out with the Jesuits. But I wanted to, of course, in this new literary journey, focus on one thing at a time in this case, and also at a less personal level, because yes, I have the experiences which I refer in a minimal kind of way during the course of the book directly with the Sabbatean Frankists, especially in Russia, of all places. But having said that, it's less personal than the Confessions.
Right.
And for that reason, I think now I'm gonna probably move to write another book with a totally different topic, but still, like you said, trying to refer to consistent facts, sources that are credible, but at the same time not making it too academic.
Too dense.
But having said that, if you go into at the end of the book and you are an academic, you can go through hundreds of footnotes, citations, and stuff that will bring you to then more studies that you can personally conduct. Because I could have made this book, 1,000 pages like this, but then who's gonna get? I mean,
exactly. You want to be able to.
Where it's really increasingly difficult for us writers to really write books, and that my books have always been very big, very substantial. But the common folk seems to be always like now referencing to the internet, so one or two pages.
Everything is instant.
Everything is instant, and so I think that this kind of book. And plus I'm selling it for a price which is minimal. I see these authors who for little booklets like this are charging so much money. And my intention is to spread the word.
Spread the information.
Selling it to an elite that can afford spending $30, I sell it for $16. And
I mean, and for the amount of work you put into it, it is well worth the $16.
So, but it has to reach more and more people. That's my prerogative.
Well, hopefully everyone who listens to this podcast is as interested in it as I was and am, and I'm enjoying it. And Leo, tell everyone, because obviously the books are off for sale on Amazon, but you can probably buy. I don't know if they can buy them directly from you if you prefer that.
You can go on leozagami.com, which is my website. It helps them also with my latest articles in reference to my literary works, and you can find, of course, the links there directly to the books on Amazon.
And you have a YouTube channel yourself that you put out content.
Well, I kind of like survived on YouTube through 17 channels that were removed during the height of the Biden censor era. We were really put in difficulty because after those elections in 2020, we suffered not only shadow banning, but the removal of channels, of profiles.
It's ridiculous.
And so, of course, Trump is a guy who we can see increasingly compromised. But one thing that has to be given to him is that he facilitated the freedom of speech in a way that his predecessor.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, didn't even attempt to. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that is, I think, very important because it means a respect for the First Amendment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the few things,
I'm saying this in the year 2025. I hope that in the next 2 or 3 years he doesn't change his mind.
No,
that's becoming.
That'll be that. If he does, that'll be it. That'll be the last thing.
The last straw. But at the moment, I think that as Americans, we can state that we still have a constitution in a country that gives us this possibility. That's why, as you know, I had to flee Europe, and I'm no longer European. I renounced formally to my Italian passport, citizenship, simply because they don't have the same freedoms. In Europe, you cannot talk about these things. You can be arrested for making certain statements in
Yep.
your books, in your articles, in your shows. The judiciary comes at you in a way that is unimaginable here in America. So we are still blessed, and I hope
Yes.
we'll continue
We
to
have,
be blessed with this great freedom we have here in the
yeah,
United
we
States.
have to keep it. We have to work to keep it, be diligent. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Leo, it's been wonderful. My best to you, my friend. I'm hoping everyone definitely picks the book up. I'm sure a lot of people who hear this are and let us know when next you have a next one coming out, and we'll send you some stuff for your YouTube channel when we get it ready.
Absolutely. Thank you
Thank you,
so
my
much
friend.
for the
Thank you.
best. Bless
Thank you
you.
to you. For everyone listening on YouTube, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you made it through that interview with Leo, and we were able to help decipher some of his strong accented words. We appreciate you. And if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, we would be so grateful if you could drop us a 5-star review and review our podcast. Even if this is not your first time listening, we're trying to grow our audience. We're trying to overcome a lot of algorithmic suppression. We're trying to court some sponsors, and we need your help. Also, if you want to support my work, we have a Patreon page that you guys can join. You can join for free, and then we have all these incredible tiers. And I have all this customizable merch for one of my tiers that I'm super excited about, that plays with my logo, the Far Out with Faust logo. And I would love to send you some of that. So please check out the Patreon page. Follow me across all my channels. I'm always putting out content. A lot of big news coming. God bless you guys. Thanks for bearing with me and hanging in there. And I love you.